Today, I'd like to talk about how every choice that we make is always like um like a juxtaposition of either short-term benefit and long-term loss, or short-term loss and long-term benefit. And for context, this came to my mind when I was like playing Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty on YouTube. If you know, you know. And I finished watching it. I saw the ending, and I kind of written down this topic as choose the lesser poison. But eventually, it evolved into understanding that even when the situation is dire and you kind of have to choose lesser poison, it still gets down to either short-term benefit, long-term loss, or short-term loss, long-term benefit. I'm not gonna spoil the plot, but basically what ends up happening is that you need to make a very difficult moral choice, which will either backfire to you like short term, but in general will be good long term, or you can get a significant benefit early on, but then eventually everything will fade away, so to speak. And even though there's three endings, all of them kind of fit into this. There's like just um, different ratio of short-term and long-term benefits. And to elaborate on this whole topic, right, we are really programmed to prefer short-term benefit because it's easy, it's instantly rewarding, dopamine, yada yada yada. There's a camp of people though that think that long-term benefit is the only thing that you need to go for. And I admit, I used to be one of them. I used to think that you should always go for long-term benefit and that you should never take the like short-term benefit. But I realized in a very stupid way, like I was playing League of Legends. And in League of Legends, simply put, there are characters who are really good early game and characters that are really good late game. And you can customize your character through certain systems to either empower your early game or empower your late game. And what I noticed is that I really like characters that are weak early, strong late. And what I would always do is empower my character in such a way that it's even stronger late game, while most pro players are actually doing the opposite, where if the character is really good late game, they still take early game uh, like supplements so that they can get through it easier and get to that late game point. And it made me start thinking and analyzing choices that I make. And first things first, it made me realize that I'm like greedy, but it also made me realize that I'm significantly irrational when it comes to choosing short term or long term benefit. And even though I believed at that point already, firmly believe that long term benefit is the best, I actually did not act that way. And I was making wrong choices quite often. And so after delving into that like whole thing, I understood that it's not that long term or short term is better than the other. It's that you need to be capable of understanding the context of the situation you're in and at least like predict somehow, at least some part of the possible consequences if you make one or the other choice so that you can balance it out. Because sometimes short term benefit is better than long term. Because let's say I didn't eat much and I have a test in like an hour. And if I eat something heavy, I'll have harder time thinking. But eating something like healthy, like I don't know, buckwheat with chicken and broccoli is actually good, but it might hinder my performance, which is why maybe I should eat Snickers. And even though long term eating Snickers is not a better idea than eating buckwheat with chicken and broccoli, it will aid me more by helping me get through the test, and then I can like equalize it by eating normal food. And so I really think that when we do stuff, we really need to like pause ourselves and think, what are we trying to achieve? Because I ran into this recently, right? So I am aim training a lot, and I realized that my technique sucks. And I thought, okay, I need to change my technique. And the problem is that when you change something so drastically, when you like do something new that you haven't done, what ends up happening is that when you learn that new thing, you're not investing that time into what you're used to. Thus, what you're used to and what you're good at starts deteriorating, and what you're bad at isn't growing fast enough to like compensate the loss of the thing you're good at. And what eventually happens is that at some point you become not good enough at the new thing and quite bad at the thing you used to do. And that's like the lowest point you are at. And if you look at it through the lens of short term benefit, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. You're losing so much that, it's not worth it if you're actually like preparing for a tournament, or, you're like a pro. But even for a pro, maybe long term benefit could be a focus, but whatever. But then if you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And your answer is, I want to become a better aim player. And you realize that it takes a lot of time, that it takes a lot of practice, discipline, and repetition. You'd be able to set your priorities in such a way that you'd be fine with becoming a worse player long term for like the next 3-4 weeks, what happened with me, and just get to that point, we'll come back stronger, getting those long term benefits. And so, in my eyes, people are both choosing. Okay, how do I put this? There are two main problems that I see. What people often do, and I was doing personally as well, that we far too often choose short term benefit, just like without thinking, just because it feels that way. And then we greed for long term benefit when it's actually not worth it. And sure, like if you're only doing short term benefit, you never get to greeting, but it's just those two polar opposites, and they're both hurting us. You know, it's like sometimes we push ourselves too hard, so we end up getting short term benefit but long term loss. Sometimes we gamble. Sometimes, sometimes we try to save money for something and not eat properly and stuff like that. So it would seem that being able to balance short term and long term benefits is quite a difficult skill that is very useful, but is very hard to acquire. And the problem is that there aren't any lessons, and at the very least, there are no videos teaching it. So maybe maybe I should make a video about talking about my experience with learning the skill, and which would like help the viewers, which is you, to like actually start going on that path on your own, like learning, analyzing, learning from mistakes and stuff like that. So if you're interested in something like that, just like let me know. But yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. All right, and as always, think more than you procrastinate, do more than you think, and be more than what you do. See ya.